Don't look like a sea dog while I'm recording this Kirblog. Boop, 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 boop.
Yeah, that's what you're getting. I couldn't really... I wanted to do the theme song, but I mean, the theme song to regular show is just the... So I couldn't really write lyrics to that, but someday, if I ever do another one of these. But in the meantime, this is what you're getting. This is a Kirblog about regular show. This was not incited by a particular question, but I went to go see the regular show movie with Ben Diskin and his girlfriend Heather on Sunday night, because they are currently playing it at the Downtown Independent Theater in Los Angeles. So for those of you who would maybe like to go see it, I think you can still get tickets for the rest of this week. I think it's going up until Friday, so go check it out, because it was quite good. I enjoyed it. I've been following regular show for several years now, right around when it first started, way back in, I think it was 2010 or so, maybe a little later than that. But, yeah, it started around the same time, obviously, as Adventure Time, and, those were both the kind of king shows of Cartoon Network at the time, and they've become mainstays by now, both reaching into the 100 episode ranges, which is really impressive, and I've still been following regular show for quite a while now, but I was a little in and out with it for a while as different things were coming up, but I've recently gotten back into it. They've been doing kind of a long continuing arc about a certain character's love life that I won't not like Love Life, the anime, the video game, but I won't spoil anything about that if you guys haven't been seeing it. But regular show is a show that was, I think, kind of unexpectedly up my alley, more so than I would have thought. I remember when I was still in college, Mike Rocco, my friend, had shown me the 4 in the AM PM thesis film that creator JG Quintel had put together. And I remember seeing that, and I was like, oh, this is pretty cool. This is pretty funny. And I was like, this guy got a show based on a show on Cartoon Network based on this. Well, okay, because there's cursing and drugs and shit in it. But I was like, oh, okay. And then after waiting a long time, just like with Adventure Time, taking it ages for it to actually come out, I started watching it, and I think just the kind of goofy humor is probably what sort of drew me into it at first. And for the most part, it's a pretty straightforward, basic kind of show. It's certainly not all on the same lines in terms of Adventure Time and Steven Universe as far as the long continuing deeper sort of plot elements or whatever. At least not in the beginning, and arguably maybe not even now, because even the arc that they've been doing with the romantic relationship stuff has not been the deepest thing in the world, but it's been incredibly relatable. And I think that's also what it is that's maybe really taken to it, is that it's even though it's a show about a freaking talking blue jay and a raccoon and a gumball machine, etc., everybody's incredibly human and relatable in a way that I think is what was keeping me going with it. Beyond just the bizarre humor style and everything. And it's funny too, because the humor, I could see people because I met some people who didn't like it at first. They were like, oh, it's just a copy of Adventure Time, which is not true, obviously, if you really know the show. But I could see why a lot of people would probably turn away from it at first, because it was oh, it's just stoner humor. It's I don't like the stuff on Adult Swim. And I actually don't like a lot of the stoner humor shows on Adult Swim. I'm not really big into a lot of those. Even though I appreciate them for what they are, they're just not really for me. But I don't know what it is. Just yeah, the characters as the show moved along, you really got to know more and more about each of them, and and they ended up having a continuing arc throughout the show. Much more detailed than I was expecting for a show like this, and it was a pleasant surprise. It was a nice payoff for following the show for over 100 episodes, and it ended up tackling a lot of really issues that I think that any of us have probably been through. Even past the romantic stuff, which has been at the forefront in the recent year with a lot of the newer episodes. Just basic things. Not that all of us, have issues with going to an arcade and suddenly a video game character coming to life and, trying to kill and destroy everything that we know and love. I have that problem. I don't know about you guys, but I certainly, related to that episode. As far as the movie itself goes, I won't spoil too much, but basically, for those of you who might be interested in getting to see it this weekend, basically it, as many, I think, TV shows adapted into movies for animated shows often do, such as the Powerpuff Girls movie, for instance. They actually took this film to tackle something that was kind of important to, I guess, the sort of overall deal of the show. In this case, it was something that dated back to Rigby and Mordecai knowing each other in high school, and actually the reason why it is that they're working at the park that they've been at for pretty much the entire show. Without getting too much into it, basically there's a lot of time travel involved. There's multiple iterations of pretty much all the major characters that we see throughout. There's a couple new characters, one in particular who ends up being the main villain. He's voiced by a celebrity who I cannot remember, unfortunately. But yeah, and it's got pretty much what you would expect from the show in terms of like the type of content and the humor and everything. It feels like, and I don't know if they're going to do this necessarily, but it definitely feels like a long episode of the show. It was about an hour and a half. I don't know if it was necessarily, what I was going to say is if it's something that was designed like other stuff like the Futurama movies and junk where they could divide it up into individual episodes. I'm not sure if they're going to go that route necessarily. But what it does do, and this is also a good thing in regards to the show was always great at like making you feel like the world could possibly come to an end. Within an 11-minute time span. They could do these crazy like high octane stories with like all these death-defying things like happening at any moment, and it really made you like fully invested, and they definitely did that with this. They were, just having a longer time slot, and they've done like, two-parter, full half-an-hour episodes before, but having this much amount of time allowed them to tell a little bit of a longer, obviously a long-form story. But they went to some pretty interesting places with it. It was definitely done in kind of a general way that, wasn't going to interfere with anything major in the show itself, I think. Because, like, for instance, I guess this isn't that big of a spoiler, but most of the female characters in the show are not present in the movie. They make some cameos, which are, it's just some cute little, like, oh, hey, here they are. But for the most part, they are not in the movie at all. So unfortunately, because of that, and I'm assuming that was to not interfere with all the stuff going on with the female characters and the interpersonal relationships with all of them in the show at the time. Because like sometimes that would happen with a Pokemon movie or like other stuff like that, where like they would release a Pokemon movie in theaters at the time, and then Ash would have certain Pokemon in the movie that he wouldn't have in the show yet that had aired in America. So I think in order to not mess with that, they designed it in this way. But it's more of a story about Mordecai and Rigby's relationship and what it is that they mean to each other and why they've stuck together. And of course, there's lots of crazy fight scenes and saving the world type shit that often happens in the show on a pretty big scale. There's some really cool stuff that happens throughout it. And a few other cameos. They got like Fred Tatasciore, Roger Craig-Smith, who's obviously a series staple. Steve Bloom is in there as well. I wish I could remember the name of the guy who was the freaking. I'm gonna look it up. Hold on. Pause. Jason Mantzoukas. That was his name. There, I did it. Sorry, I've spoiled all the movie magic for you. But anyway, yeah. It was a fun trip. It was a really enjoyable ride. It wasn't anything like like oh my god, but it was definitely like it was a fun ride. And if you're a fan of the show, you'll definitely get a kick out of it. There's some moments I think towards the end that were like. They were pretty heartfelt, when not like the full on climax, but like one of the big turning points about why it is that Rigby and Mordecai have stuck together this long, and what it is that's keeping them together. It's cool. There's some interesting twists to it. Granted, the twist, I feel like the big twist of it was like pretty like that's pretty obvious, but I mean. The show is also pretty simple and straightforward, so I didn't expect the movie would be so like, mind-blowing necessarily either in terms of the story, but yeah, it was a really enjoyable ride, and I really liked it. I don't know if they're going to be airing it on TV at some point. I'm sure that they will, but yeah, definitely worth going to see in the theaters. So if you live in the California area and you want to go check it out, go do that. I think that you would enjoy it. And in fact, actually, Heather, Ben's girlfriend, who had never seen the show before, she enjoyed it, and she didn't really know much about the show going into it other than the basic things that I had explained to her. So yeah, if that's any indication of you being able to understand it, even if you've not seen the show, more reason to go check it out. One last little thing too, while I'm remembering, I actually did a interview with the creator JG Quintel, who's also the voice of Mordecai. I did an interview with him way back in 2010, actually, where when the show was first beginning to air, and it was actually for a school project that I was doing. It was my last year of college. Our assignment was we had to interview 2 different people that were involved with the animation community of some kind, some way, shape, or form. And at the time, JG, I guess, was probably more a little more free to do stuff like this. He was very active on his DeviantArt page, and he would fave a lot of fan art and write regular blog posts about different things and et cetera. And it was pretty cool. And so I reached out to him and I said, hey, like, would you mind? I'd love to interview you. And so I had to ask him 15 different questions. And I learned a bunch of different things, including the film that he did, the 2 in the AM PM, and Naive Man from Lollyland, which is also where Pops came from, were completely like off the cuff kind of ideas. They were from like a writing exercise or something where they had to like draw out a word from like a hat and just do a film based on that. So like 2 in the AM PM was from the word candy, and Naive Man from Lollyland happened to be lollipop, so lucked out there. And then yeah, like him working on Camp Laszlo at the time, and then working on Flapjack, because he and Thurup, the creator of Flapjack, went to college together at CalArts, and then eventually him pitching the show. And it was so funny because the way that he described kind of how it picked up was so kind of miraculous, and even he was like, yeah, I don't know what it is that they saw in it, but they liked it. The whole idea of the characters from his thesis films being in the show was entirely out of just like, oh, I just like to draw them, and they were fun designs, and he was like, I don't really like making up new characters because it's really hard to do. It was easier to just reuse the ones that I already liked from my previous films, and that was how it went. I think also that from talking to him, this was the first time that I learned about storyboard-driven shows, because I assumed that it was all done through like script writers and everything, and this was the first time he told me like, no, that we don't have any script writers. The story is all in the storyboards, and our artists make up the dialogue as they go along, and that was my first time ever really getting to know what the deal was with that. And I actually tested on the show a few years ago now, when I was still living in New York. They were accepting applications. This was back in like 2012, I think it was. But I was doing that, and I had to do the exact same way that they and obviously I didn't get it, but I had to learn what it was like to storyboard an entire thing without writing an actual script. I think I might have wrote it like just for my own sake, but it was done that way. So that was kind of my first learning experience in that. And otherwise, some other things about how like he was surprised at the maturity that would get through, and if in that very Trey Parker, Matt Stone kind of way, he would write something inappropriate. He and his team would come up with something inappropriate. Sometimes they would get back notes from the network to change it, and then they would come up with something even more inappropriate, but somehow that would get through, which happens with South Park all the goddamn time. Just the general tone of the show wanted to be really realistic and not, grading. He was telling me about how he was learning to scream really for the first time because he wasn't generally a person who ever raised his voice. But voicing Mordecai, he kind of had to figure out how to do that. And it was really cool. And he was a big help. And then I ended up getting an A on the assignment because the interview turned out really good. So I owe him a lot for that. And also he mentioned a funny story about how 2 people in his crew were wrestling in the office one night, and then they busted a hole in the wall, and then they put a Skips poster over that to hide the hole. And it was apparently after they'd finished the episode The Power, which is pretty funny. So it was a cool thing. And so JG, not that you'll ever probably hear this, but thank you for that, because you helped me get a good grade on this paper. Oh wait, no, hold on, one more story, because I already told him that, because now I'm remembering. I did finally get to meet him very briefly in person at New York Comic Con. This must have been like maybe 2013, maybe, I forget exactly, but it was a Cartoon Network panel, and it was him and Pendleton Ward and a bunch of the cast and crew of Regular Show and Adventure Time both up there, and it was like really like when the shows were first getting like super popular and everything. And I went up and I got to ask a question about, hey, would you guys ever want to consider doing a crossover between Adventure Time and Regular Show? And Penn Ward and JG Quintel were both. I'd mentioned in the question before, and also you got me an A on my report card, not on my assignment. Thank you for that. And he was like, oh, cool, yeah. Yeah, basically, I asked them like, "Oh, what would a crossover be like?" And then JG and Pam, I think, I don't know if I'm assuming they were being joking, of like, "No way, I would never work with this jerk over here or whatever." And then Tom Kenny, who's the voice of the Ice King on Adventure Time, who was up there, made some joke about, like, he was doing the Ice King's voice, and he was like, I keep putting things in this gumball, and nothing's coming out. It's not working. Sam Marin, the voice of Benson, was just looked, he was just laughing. And I was like, all right, I'll take it. That works for me. It's a perfectly acceptable answer. So I guess that's going to wrap us up. But yeah, so if you're in the LA area and you can make it to the Downtown Independent Theater, go check out the regular show movie. It's quite fantastic, and I quite enjoyed it, and you might as well. But otherwise, in the comments below, leave some comments about your favorite regular show episodes and characters and things if you watch it. Or if you've not watched it, tell me why. Because ain't nothing but a good cartoon that you should be watching. So tell me why you haven't yet, or why you won't get into it, so I can berate you. Don't do that. But yeah, and if you have ideas for future Kirblog topics, leave one about that too. Let me know, and hit me up on Twitter, Tumblr, Facebook, whatever you feel like. If not, in the comments or otherwise. Although most of the questions lately have been coming from the comments, not very many over anything else as of late. So I don't know. Maybe do that also, just for some variety's sake. I don't know, man. Don't talk to me. Don't talk to me, man. Okay, bye.